Rain poured down like a curtain drawn across the city. Cars splashed past, their headlights glowing through the mist. Emily clutched her bag tighter, sprinting toward the nearest awning for cover. She ducked under the small shelter beside a closed bookstore, drops still clinging to her hair. That's when she noticed him, a man standing a few feet away, soaked but calm, watching the rain as if it told him a story. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. He looked about 30, maybe a few years older, with dark hair that curled at the ends from the rain. His jacket was drenched, but he didn't seem to care. Emily hesitated before saying softly, "Some storm, huh?" He turned, meeting her eyes with a quiet smile. "Yeah," he said. "But sometimes storms bring people where they're supposed to be." His words caught her off guard. She laughed nervously, unsure what to say. "That's an interesting way to look at it," he shrugged. "Guess I try to find meaning in small things." For a while, they just listened to the rain. It hit the pavement hard, echoing in the narrow street. The air smelled of wet asphalt and distant coffee. Emily tried not to stare, but there was something different about him, something that felt strangely familiar. "Do you come here often?" she asked, then winced at how it sounded. He smiled, amused. "Not really. I was just walking home when the rain decided to make things complicated," she nodded. "Same here. I was heading back from work." He gestured toward the dark bookstore behind them. "I used to come here a lot." Before it closed, her curiosity piqued. "You like reading?" His expression softened. "Used to. My mom owned a small shop like this. Books always felt like home to me." The way he said it made Emily's chest tighten a little. There was a quiet sadness in his tone, like he carried memories he wasn't ready to share. She looked out at the street again, watching puddles form. "It's strange," she said. "Sometimes the rain feels lonely." He nodded. "Or maybe it just makes us realize we are." Their eyes met again, and this time, neither of them looked away. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was full. Like both were waiting for something neither could name. Then, from somewhere far away, thunder rumbled. Emily jumped slightly, laughing to cover it up. "I hate that sound," she admitted. He smiled. "Then it's a good thing you're not alone right now." She felt her heart stir, not in a loud way, but quiet, like a door opening somewhere deep inside. Minutes passed. The rain showed no sign of stopping. He checked his watch but didn't move. "You should probably go," she said. "You'll catch a cold." He shook his head. "I'll wait until you decide to go. It's safer that way," Emily frowned. "You don't even know me." He gave a small smile. "Maybe not yet." The words hung there, gentle and steady. She wanted to ask what he meant, but something told her not to. Instead, she said softly, "I'm Emily." He looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Daniel." The rain softened a little. The rhythm slowed, the world quieter now. Daniel reached out his hand slightly, palm up, as if to test the drops. "Funny," he said. "Sometimes life brings people together in the simplest ways." Emily smiled faintly. "And sometimes it rains for a reason," he nodded. "Maybe this one did." The lights from the street flickered in the puddles at their feet, and for a second, everything else faded, the city noise, the thunder, even time itself. But as Emily looked at Daniel again, something about his expression changed. The warmth in his eyes shifted, replaced by something else, something deeper. He took a breath, looked out into the distance, and said quietly, "I shouldn't even be here tonight." Emily froze. "What do you mean?" He looked back at her, his voice barely above a whisper. "Because tonight was supposed to be the night I said goodbye." The words sank into the rain between them, heavy and real. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She didn't know what he meant, but something in his tone sent a chill through her. The rain began to fall harder again, as if echoing what he just said. And in that moment, she realized this wasn't just a stranger in the rain. This was someone standing on the edge of something far more fragile. For a moment, Emily didn't know how to respond. Daniel's words hung between them, soft but unsettling. "The night you said goodbye?" she asked carefully. "To who?" He gave a faint smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Not to someone," he said quietly. "To something." The rain softened again, almost listening. Emily stepped closer, unsure why she cared so much already. "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to," she said. He looked down, water dripping from his hair. "No, it's okay. I think maybe I'm supposed to." For the first time, his voice cracked just slightly. "My mom passed away a year ago tonight. I was heading to the old bridge I was planning to leave some flowers. It's where we used to sit when things got hard." Emily's chest tightened. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He nodded, eyes distant. "I thought I'd stop here until the rain slowed. But then you showed up." There was something about the way he said it, like he didn't mean it as chance. Emily hesitated, unsure what to do with the weight of his grief. "She must have been special," she said softly. Daniel smiled faintly. "She was. She used to say every person you meet is a mirror. They show you something you didn't know you needed to see." He looked at her then, eyes steady. "Maybe you're that mirror tonight?" Emily felt something shift inside her. She didn't know this man, not really. But she couldn't deny there was a pull, gentle but strong. They stood quietly for a while, the rain turning into a steady drizzle. "I know what it's like," she said finally. "Losing someone? My dad passed 2 years ago. I still catch myself wanting to tell him things." Daniel's expression softened. "It never really goes away, does it?" She shook her head. "No, you just learn to live beside it." He nodded slowly, as if he understood that too well. The wind picked up again, pushing rain under the awning. Emily shivered. Without a word, Daniel shrugged off his damp jacket and held it toward her. She shook her head. "No, you'll freeze," he smiled. "I've been colder before." She hesitated but took it anyway. The fabric was still warm in spots, carrying his scent, faintly like cedar and rain. "Thank you," she murmured. He just nodded, watching the street again. "Funny thing," he said softly. "I almost didn't go out tonight. Something told me to leave the house anyway." Emily tilted her head. "Maybe you were meant to." He looked at her again, really looked this time. "Do you believe in that? That things happen for a reason?" She hesitated. "I used to. Then life happened. Now. I guess I want to believe again." Daniel smiled faintly. "Maybe tonight's your reminder." For a while, they just listened. To the city, to the rain, to the quiet between them. Then, from somewhere nearby, a light flickered on. The bookstore sign, though the shop had been closed for months, suddenly glowed faintly through the dust. Emily frowned. "That's weird. The power's been out in there since it closed." Daniel turned toward it. "Maybe someone forgot to cut the wiring." But his tone said he didn't quite believe that. Emily peered through the glass, pressing her hand to the foggy window. Rows of books still lined the shelves, though covered in dust. "It feels like time just stopped in there," she whispered. Daniel stepped closer beside her. "My mom used to say stories never die. They just wait to be read again." Emily smiled faintly. "That sounds like something she'd say." He nodded, then went quiet for a long moment. "She told me once that when something important happens, the world gives you a sign." Emily looked back at the glowing sign, then at him. "You think this is one of those?" He met her eyes. "Maybe. Or maybe it's just reminding me I'm not as alone as I thought." A gentle warmth filled the air, even as the rain drizzled around them. Emily felt her heartbeat slow, calm. For a brief second, she imagined what it would be like to see him again after tonight. To keep talking, maybe over coffee instead of rain. But then Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his face changed. He turned away slightly, reading the screen, his expression tightening with something like pain. Emily stepped closer. "Is everything okay?" He hesitated, then locked the phone and forced a small smile. "Yeah, just complicated." There was something in his tone that didn't match the words. She didn't push. Instead, she said softly, "Sometimes The things we avoid saying are the ones we need to say most. He looked at her for a long time, then nodded slowly. You're right, but I don't think I can tonight. The rain began to slow again, the streets glistening with city lights. Emily exhaled, unsure why the thought of him leaving felt heavier than it should. Daniel looked out toward the corner of the street. When the rain stops, I'll go. I promised myself I would, she swallowed. Go where? He looked back at her, eyes full of something she couldn't read. Back to where it all started, and before she could ask what that meant, thunder rolled again in the distance, low and slow. Emily turned to look at the sky, and when she looked back, Daniel was already stepping out from under the awning. Wait, she called. He paused just long enough to glance over his shoulder. Thank you, he said softly, for being here tonight. And with that, he walked into the rain, disappearing down the empty street. Emily stood frozen, watching until he was gone. Something about that moment, his words, the bookstore light, the rain, felt like it was all connected, but she didn't know how. Not yet. The rain faded into a mist by the time Emily stepped out from under the awning. The street was quiet now, the kind of quiet that felt like it was holding its breath. She looked both ways, but Daniel was gone. No trace of him except for a faint, wet trail leading toward the old bridge. Something inside her tugged, soft but insistent. She didn't know why, but she couldn't just leave. Not yet, so she started walking. The air was cool, smelling of wet leaves and pavement. Streetlights shimmered in the puddles as she made her way through the narrow lanes. Her shoes soaked quickly, but she didn't care. Daniel's last words echoed in her head. Back to where it all started. She didn't know what that meant exactly, but something told her it mattered. As she walked, she passed the quiet park where she used to meet her father after work when she was little. The memory made her slow down. His smile, his laugh, the way he'd always say, "Rain's just heaven watering the flowers we forget to care for." She felt her throat tighten. Maybe Daniel was right. Maybe storms did bring people where they were supposed to be. The bridge came into view a few blocks later, a long stretch of faded wood and steel over a dark, restless river. Emily stopped for a second, the air colder here. The streetlights didn't reach this far, and there, standing near the middle of the bridge, was Daniel. He was leaning against the railing, staring out at the water. The bouquet of white lilies in his hand looked almost glowing against the darkness. She hesitated before calling out, "Daniel!" He turned, surprise flickering across his face. Then he smiled, softly, like he was expecting her. "You shouldn't have followed me," he said. She walked closer. "You didn't exactly leave me much choice," he chuckled faintly. "You're stubborn, maybe," she said. "Or maybe I just don't like letting people stand alone in the rain." Daniel looked at her for a moment, then nodded toward the river. This was her favorite place. My mom loved watching the water. She said it reminded her that life never really stops. It just keeps moving. Emily stood beside him, resting her hands on the cool metal railing. "She sounds like someone worth remembering." "She was," he said softly. But tonight wasn't just about her. Emily frowned. "Then what was it about?" He took a breath, voice trembling slightly. "I came here tonight because I wasn't sure if I could keep doing this anymore." Her heart clenched. "Doing what?" "Trying," he said. "It's been a hard year. I lost my job. My best friend moved away. My mom's gone. Some nights I just feel empty." He swallowed hard, eyes fixed on the river. "I didn't know if I'd have a reason to keep going after tonight." Emily's pulse quickened. She stepped closer. "Daniel, you're not alone." He shook his head slightly. "I didn't think anyone would care if I disappeared." "Then you were wrong," she said firmly. He looked at her then, eyes wet, not from the rain this time. "Why would you care? You barely know me." "Because," she said quietly, "I know what it's like to feel like you're fading." The words came before she could stop them. Her voice wavered. "When my dad died, I went months pretending I was fine. I wasn't. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't smile. One night I came here too. Daniel stared at her, eyes widening slightly. I didn't come to jump, she said softly. I just came to feel something. Anything. The wind blew across the bridge, carrying the faint scent of the lilies. I sat right here, she continued. And a stranger passed by. He didn't say much. Just sat with me until the sun came up. I never saw him again, but I think he saved me without even knowing it. Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. Maybe that's what you're doing for me. She looked at him. Then don't make me lose you too. He turned away, wiping his eyes. You make it sound so easy. It's not, she said. But walking away is. For a moment, neither spoke. Just the sound of water moving beneath them. Then Daniel took a slow breath and placed the lilies gently on the railing. She'd want me to live, he said quietly. She would, Emily replied. He looked at her, his expression softer now, like the weight he carried had started to lift, just slightly. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For showing up, she smiled faintly. Guess we both needed someone tonight. Daniel nodded, the corner of his mouth lifting into a real smile this time. You know, he said, when I saw you under that awning, I thought you were lost. Maybe I was, she said. But not anymore. A quiet peace settled between them. The rain had stopped completely, leaving the world still and glistening. Daniel looked out at the horizon where faint light peeked through the clouds. It's almost morning, Emily nodded. A new day. He turned toward her. Maybe we could get coffee later? There's a diner a few blocks away. It's not fancy, but they make good pie, she smiled. I'd like that. He smiled back, softer now, and for the first time that night, he looked alive. They stood there a moment longer, side by side, watching the first hints of dawn. But as they started walking back toward the street, Emily glanced one last time at the river, just to remember the moment. And that's when she saw something that made her stop cold. Near the spot where Daniel had placed the lilies, the water shimmered faintly, like a reflection that didn't belong. It looked almost like a woman's face, smiling softly before fading with the current. Emily blinked, unsure if it was real, but Daniel never turned back to see. Emily didn't say anything at first. She just stared at the river, the faint shimmer still rippling where the lilies had been placed. It was gone in seconds, leaving only the quiet reflection of the bridge lights. When she finally looked up, Daniel was already a few steps ahead, walking toward the dimly lit street. She hurried to catch up. Daniel, she said softly, did you see that? He glanced back. See what? The water. It looked like someone was there. A woman, maybe. He paused, eyebrows pulling together. No, I didn't see anything. Emily hesitated. Maybe it was just my imagination. He smiled faintly. Maybe it was something else. They walked in silence for a while. The storm had washed the streets clean, leaving that faint smell of wet pavement and new beginnings. At the corner, they reached a small diner with fogged-up windows and a flickering sign that read Harbor Cafe. Daniel pushed open the door, and a soft bell chimed above them. Warm air and the smell of coffee greeted them like an embrace. They slid into a booth near the window. A waitress poured them coffee without asking, her tired smile kind. Emily wrapped her hands around the mug, letting the heat soak into her fingers. I can't believe how fast everything happened tonight, she said quietly. Feels like I've known you longer than a few hours. Daniel nodded, eyes thoughtful. Some people are like that. They show up and it feels like they were supposed to all along. She looked at him. Do you really believe that? He hesitated. I didn't, not until tonight. They both smiled, faintly but real. The waitress came by with 2 plates of warm apple pie. On the house, she said. Stormy nights deserve something sweet. Emily thanked her, then turned back to Daniel. So what happens after this? He chuckled softly. After coffee? After tonight, she clarified. He looked down at his mug. I don't know, but maybe I'll start small. Call an old friend, visit my mom's sister, maybe fix that old bookstore sign I used to love. Her eyebrows lifted. You mean the one we stood under? He nodded. Yeah, it used to be hers. Emily blinked. Wait, what? Daniel smiled faintly. My mom owned that bookstore. The one behind the awning. That's why I stopped there. It's the closest place that still feels like her. Emily sat back, her heart skipping a beat. You're serious? He nodded. I haven't been back there in months. Couldn't bring myself to. She felt a shiver run through her, not from fear, but from something that felt like connection. Maybe that's why the sign turned on. Daniel looked up, surprise flickering across his face. You think so? She nodded slowly. Maybe she wanted you to see you're not alone. He didn't respond right away. Just stared at the table for a moment, lost in thought. You know, he said softly, she used to tell me that when she was gone, she'd find a way to send a sign. Something simple, like light. Emily's voice was barely above a whisper. And tonight, the light came on. He looked at her then, eyes wet but peaceful. Yeah, I guess it did. They both went quiet. The diner hummed around them, the soft clatter of dishes, the faint tune of an old jukebox in the corner. Emily felt warmth spread through her chest, a calm she hadn't felt in years. Daniel, she said after a while, can I tell you something? Of course. When I saw you standing under that awning, I wasn't planning to stop. I was just going to run past. But something made me turn back, he smiled gently. And now? I'm glad I did, he held her gaze. Me too. The air between them shifted, quiet, full, tender. Then Daniel's phone buzzed again on the table. He glanced at it and his expression changed slightly. Who is it? Emily asked softly. He hesitated before answering. A number I don't recognize. He turned the screen toward her. It showed a simple text message that read, Thank you for coming to the bridge. She's proud of you. Emily's eyes widened. Daniel, who sent that? He shook his head, visibly shaken. I don't know. He tried calling back, but the number was no longer in service. The phone screen dimmed, reflecting both their faces in the glow. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, Emily said quietly, You believe in signs, right? Daniel nodded slowly. I do now. Outside, the sky had begun to brighten. A pale pink glow stretched across the horizon. Emily took a small bite of pie, though she barely tasted it. Her mind kept returning to that reflection in the river and the soft light of the bookstore sign. She glanced at Daniel, who was staring out the window, lost in thought. Daniel? She said softly. He turned. Yeah? I think your mom kept her promise. He smiled faintly, tears glimmering in his eyes. Maybe she did. The bell above the diner door jingled as a small group entered, bringing in a rush of cool air. Emily looked outside. The rain had completely stopped, but when she turned back to Daniel, her words froze on her lips. The booth across from her was empty, his coffee still steamed. His jacket still hung on the seat. But Daniel was gone. Emily blinked, looking around the diner. No one had seen him leave. Her heart raced as she stood, glancing toward the door, but the street outside was empty. And then, from the corner of the window, she noticed something. Outside, across the street. The bookstore sign flickered once, then glowed brighter than before. In its reflection, just for a heartbeat, she thought she saw Daniel's silhouette standing in the doorway, smiling. Then it was gone. For several seconds, Emily couldn't move. She just stood by the diner window, staring at the glowing bookstore sign across the street. It was impossible. She had just seen him sitting across from her, laughing, holding that cup of coffee, alive and warm. Now? Nothing. The bell above the diner door jingled again as someone left, and she turned quickly, half expecting to see Daniel stepping outside. But the sidewalk was empty. She pressed her hand to her chest, trying to steady her breathing. The warmth of the coffee mug still lingered on the table. His jacket still carried the faint scent of rain. Emily sat back down slowly, her mind spinning. Maybe he'd gone to make a call. Maybe he'd stepped outside for air. But something inside her whispered that wasn't it. She reached for his phone. It was still on the table, screen dark. The message he'd received minutes ago glowed faintly in her memory. "Thank you for coming to the bridge. She's proud of you." Her throat tightened. She turned to look back at the window. The bookstore sign across the street still glowed steadily now, warm, inviting, alive. It was the same light they'd seen earlier in the storm, the one that shouldn't have been working at all. Emily stood, grabbed his jacket, and stepped outside. The morning air was crisp, the streets washed clean by the night's rain. She crossed the road slowly, her shoes splashing through shallow puddles. When she reached the bookstore, she placed her hand against the cool glass door. The light inside flickered softly, casting long golden reflections across the empty shop floor. She tried the handle. It turned easily. A faint chime sounded as she stepped inside. The air smelled of old paper, dust, and something faintly floral, like lilies. "Daniel?" she called. Her voice echoed through the quiet space. No answer. She walked between the shelves, running her fingers over the spines of worn books. Some had handwritten price tags still clinging to them. Others had bookmarks tucked between yellowed pages. Then she saw it, on the small table near the back. A framed photo lying face down. Emily turned it over carefully. It was Daniel, standing beside an older woman with kind eyes and the same gentle smile. They were in front of this very shop. A sign above them read, "Willow Books." And in the corner of the photo, written in neat handwriting, "Our stories never end. They just find new readers." Emily felt tears sting her eyes. She pressed the photo to her chest, closing her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, the air seemed different, softer somehow. A faint breeze brushed past her, carrying the scent of lilies again. She turned, and for just a heartbeat, she saw him. Daniel stood near the front door, bathed in the morning light, his expression calm, peaceful. He smiled at her, the same warm smile he'd given in the rain. Emily froze, unable to speak. He didn't move closer. Just looked at her and mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." Then, as the light from the window shifted, he was gone. The air stilled. The bookstore was silent again. Emily stood there for a long time, her heart pounding, tears slipping quietly down her cheeks. She placed the photo gently back on the table and whispered, "You're welcome." As she turned to leave, she noticed something new. The neon sign outside had dimmed, slightly, but the letters now glowed just enough to spell a faint message at the bottom of the glass. "Open for new stories." Emily smiled through her tears. She stepped out into the sunlight, clutching Daniel's jacket close. The world felt different now, brighter, softer, full of quiet meaning. She looked back one last time at the bookstore, its light still flickering in the daylight. Then she whispered more to herself than anyone, "Maybe storms really do bring people where they're supposed to be." As she walked down the quiet street, a soft gust of wind followed her, carrying with it the faintest sound of laughter, fading into the morning air. And though she would never see Daniel again, she knew one thing for certain. He hadn't really gone, because some goodbyes don't end. They just turn into beginnings.